I'm combining the look of a rancher-style jacket with a 1954 vintage design. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Kyla, and I do custom designs, pattern hacks, home decorating, and a whole lot more. When I made a Sherpa line jacket for my brother a few months ago, I really wanted one for myself, and he almost didn't get his. But I decided to give it to him and decided to make one in my own style. I went through my pattern stash and knew exactly which jacket I was going to make. Vogue V1023, which is a vintage 1954 design. I've made this coat before, so I'm familiar with the pattern, and I'll only be making a couple of changes. One, I'll be extending the lining because I want the Sherpa to completely cover the inside of the coat, and I won't be making the bound buttonholes. I made those buttonholes on the first coat, and I love how they look, and I love how tailored they are, and I understand that's why coats are sometimes so expensive, because of the bound buttonholes, but I'm not making them this time. I want the contrasting thread to show because I'll be doing some top stitching along the seams of the outside of the coat. By combining denim, sherpa, and metal with this pattern, I have all the elements of a rancher style jacket embodied in a classic car-length coat. That's the look I'm going for. Let's get started. Since the sleeves were connected to this coat, it was way too big for my cutting table to accommodate. So I had to lay it out on the floor. And as you can see, I've got a little bit left, but I only have the 4 pieces to cut for the outer part of the coat. Piece number 1, 6, 7, which is the undersleeve, and 8, which is the undercollar. So that works out. So I've started cutting out the lining part of the coat, and I'm making a few small adjustments to the lining, but I'm keeping pretty much everything the same. Last 2 panels of the lining, and I've got everything cut out, and I'm ready to start sewing. I'm using hair canvas interfacing for my collar and the front pieces that are going to come down behind the buttonholes and the actual button placement on my jacket. But I want to show you something with the collar as far as the grain line goes. When you have an arrow that's pointed at an angle on a pattern piece, you place it straight of the grain with the fabric, meaning north, south, east, west, so that when you pull from side to side, top to bottom, there's no give. But by placing the piece at an angle, now you have your stretch. It's like you're tricking the fabric into giving you some elasticity, and this will help with easing of putting in your undercollar. So I'm transferring all my markings from the pattern pieces on the wrong side of the outer layer of the denim. I'm just using an ink pen because it's denim. You're not going to see it on the other side. And plus it's a dark denim as well, so that really helps. It's easier for me to do this upside down and just roll my pattern piece along and trace as I go. Almost as if I'm bird walking to get to that final point at the bottom of the dart. So there's my dart. I've got my other markings for my sleeve here and for the bottom of the cuff as well. I'll do this for the other side, and then I'll also do this for the back of both sides of the lining. So this is the under collar for the underside of the jacket, the denim part. And I just want to show you that this piece is just cut twice on that grain line, so now it has that stretch to it. I just did a zigzag stitch to overlap the center seam for both. And then I'll place this on top of the denim part of the collar and do what they call a pad stitching down most of the collar width. Pad stitching will allow the interfacing to just adhere itself to the denim and not move around, because this isn't fusible interfacing, it's just sew in. I'm going to start with stitching the darts on the outer layer of the front and back of the coat, and then also the lining as well. And you'll notice that I switched to my heavy duty machine, which is my manual Singer that I have just for my heavy duty projects of denim, cotton twill, brocade, vinyl, those types of fabrics. Here's the dart here. So I'll repeat that for the other side, the back, and go from there. And these are the side pockets that I've added to the front of the coat, and I'll also attach them to the back as well. Okay, so I've got the two darts going down the front pieces. You can see it from the back here. My reinforcements for the gusset lining that's going to go underneath the sleeves. There's the outer sleeve gusset and a gusset for the lining as well. And I've also got the side pockets that I decided to add to this pattern. It wasn't included, but I didn't want to do the welted pockets on the outer as I did with the last coat that I made. So I made side pockets for this one. And I repeated the same steps with the back pieces. The darts are a little bit straighter back here and a little bit shorter, you'll notice, but they also have the same reinforcements at the point of where I'll insert the gusset sleeve part, and then the pockets to match the front. I repeated that same process also with the lining. Here's my darts here. The reinforcement right at the point of where the sleeve insert is going to go. And I don't need pockets on these because it's the lining part, so. And here's the back section of the lining connected. I've got the darts at the top here and my seam allowance, and then also my basting stitch that I'm going to open in between certain areas. This will just allow ease in the coat with putting it on, because sherpa is a sticky fabric that likes to attach itself to you, so that'll help it with getting it on and off. And then you'll see the stitch lining slashes here that I'm going to cut to the point of where those reinforcement lining interfacing pieces are. Now I can give my darts and pockets a good press. Here's something that I want to point out about this pattern, that they probably expect that if you're an average sewer and you've been sewing for a while, that you already know this. But in case you don't, here's a couple little tips. The area where they have you put the piece of remnant over the slashed edge underneath the armhole where the gusset lining is going to start, they kind of just skip from showing you the actual remnant on the fabric, and then that's it. What I'm going to do is fold that on the inside, press that down, and then I'll add my gusset lining part to it so that you can't see that. But they kind of left all that information out in the middle. Also, with the basting stitch on the back, there's 3 areas where they want you to do these zigzag stitches or a cross stitch between these small circles, and there's 3 areas that they have here. I'm going to go back and then remove the basting stitches in between, because that's what actually gives you the ease of putting the coat on and off without popping a seam in the lining. So they left that part out as well. But as I stated before, since this is labeled an average sewing pattern, they probably think that you would know this information. Now I can pin the gusset lining underneath the sleeves, and making sure to match up all my markings with my points that I have here. Stitch up the top shoulder of the lining, and then it's complete. I'll set that to the side and go back to the outer. I'm getting there. So here's a lining all set, good to go. I've got the collar attached to it, and I open my pleat up in the back. Ready for the outer. So I made a change to the type of interfacing that I used for the backing on the outer fabric. I started off with the canvas horsehair, but it was a little bit too lightweight and I wanted a little bit more stiffness. So I found this medium weight interfacing by the roll on Amazon. Kind of looks like paper towel, but it has more of a stiffness that I want to achieve, especially for trying to hold up the collar shape and around the neckline as well. I use the same there too. So now I can move on to attaching the two fronts to the back by the side, and then work on connecting the gusset lining to the sleeves. Now that I have the gusset lining attached to the sleeves, I can top stitch all around this area. And it's going to be easier for me to do this while it's still open and I haven't connected it by the shoulders. I have the front and back attached at the shoulder seams, all the way down the arms. So I'm going to give it a good press, pressing the seam open, and then I'll be able to do my top stitch. I just had to top stitch the top of the sleeve too. I am down to about maybe 4 inches left, and this sleeve is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Probably should have left one of these stitches open underneath. That way I could have opened this out. And because this fabric is thick, I am really pushing it. Let's see if I can make it. right, I did it. Whew, that was tight, but it looks good. Now I can work on connecting the collar to the top. I went back and opened up the seam behind the collar to add this hang loop here. And now that the lining is completely done, I've got complete open here in the back, and I also have an opening here I left on the side for when I need to turn it inside out once I attach it to the outer fabric. Now I can move on to the outer layer, and lastly, the buttonholes. I've made some little clips along the inside of the collar so that will help with giving you that nice curve when you're standing the collar up or when it's laying down. And you can see my little triangle marks all along. These are the buttons that I'm going to be using for my coat, and I love the vintage rustic look that they have to them, and even though they're metal, they are washable and dry cleanable. So that's a good thing, even though I'll probably dry clean this coat most of the time. They came from a local fabric shop in my neck of the woods in Michigan. And I wish I remembered the name of the young lady who helped me pick these, because she's helped me pick quite a few really nice buttons. I have to get her name for the next time. Okay, I've got the outer ready, and now I can pin it in place to the lining and attach it all around the collar and the front flap pieces down to the bottom and the hem. I'm almost there. I've got my lining attached, the sleeves are done. I need to finish up the bottom hem here. And then start on the buttonholes. And I'm loving how just a little bit of the detail in the sherpa is showing on the outside. I wanted a little bit of trim just like this. So that's perfect. And I really love how this contrast stitching is picking up this tea stain colored sherpa as well. And I am almost there. Now I can go into the side of the opening that I left in the lining here and start pinning in place the hem at the bottom. And what you want to do is line up your seams first, pin those in place. And then work your way down and in between each of your seams to make sure that the lining is lined up proportionately. Now that the hem is sewn in place, I can just take my seam ripper and I'll fluff out the sherpa that's kind of tucked under around all the seams, and then finish up with my favorite part, the buttonholes. I'm just kidding. I've got 3 layers here prepared to do a test buttonhole because I'm not sure what style buttonhole I want. On my Singer heavy duty machine, I only have the option of one style of buttonhole. But on my Brother machine, I have about 5 different or 6 different selections to pick from. So I'm hoping that maybe I can get all 3 layers through the Brother, because that's the one I'm leaning towards. Okay, I've got 7 different buttonholes to pick from on my Brother machine. I don't know, I'm leaning towards 33 to 35, but I have to test them out to see. Okay, so after a few trials, I think I'm just going to do the standard one. This is supposed to be 33 and have a rounded edge at the bottom, almost like a light bulb. It looks like Big Bird's legs. So I don't know what happened there. Maybe the fabric's a little bit too heavy and it's easier to do this on like a thin cotton or a silk or something like that. But that's not looking the way I want it to look. So I'm just going to go back to either 30 or 32 with just the boxed off rectangular edges. And that should be good. So this is a little bit tricky with making my markings for the buttonholes. The piece is separate and I didn't make the markings prior to cutting it out because I wanted to put it together first, see how it was raised, how any of it curved over once I added the lining, and then to go back after. But I think I've matched things up pretty well as far as being about 2 inches from the end of the outer lining seam. So I'm just going to wing it and make my markings. And I just have a little piece of soap here. This is really great for, it's just easier to just wipe off, and it's just unscented Dove. That's all I have. So I'm going to continue on down, make my markings, measure them off, and hope for the best. since my buttons are shank style, I'm going to stitch each one on by hand. And I just want to show you that an option to not stitching buttons, or say you have glass buttons or ceramic buttons that are fragile and you want to remove them if you need to wash the garment or dry clean it, you can use these button pins. And it's just a safety pin that has a bump in it that you hook on the underside, and it loops the hole underneath the shank button. I love how the coat came out, and just a couple of things that I would do differently for next time. I would definitely leave the pleated fold and the back lining out and just leave that smooth, especially for lining this thick. So I did have to trim that down, but it lays pretty flat now, so it's to my liking. And then the second thing that I would do is for the gusset, I would leave the outside layer as it is, because I do like the detailing with the diamond detail underneath and being able to top stitch that. But with the lining, again, because the fabric was bulky, I could have just left that as a hole. So, and when I say hole, meaning I would allow for the sleeve to be just one seam on the bottom and one seam on the top instead of adding the gusset to it. Other than that, I love everything else about it. It's a classic pattern, and I will pull this out year after year. I love the washed vintage gray denim with the contrast of the tea-stained sherpa, and the metal buttons and the contrasting thread just top it all off. Well, that's it for today's video. Thanks so much for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.